Yes, hello, folks. Welcome to the weekly Manchester United podcast. I'm your host, as always, Phil Brown, joined with my regular co-host, the excellent James Rhodes, on this Monday after another disappointing defeat at home to Fulham in the FA Cup on penalties. Another extremely disappointing performance for the most part. Extremely worrying. We've lots to talk about today, of course, and other United news. We'll cover all the other talking points surrounding the football club, but we'll start with the game against Fulham. Give us your thoughts, mate.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because I think that definitely there was a good chunk of the game when I was really disappointed with the play. And we've seen this weird kind of dichotomy, I guess it is, where you take Ipswich down to 10 men, a valiant effort, intensity, energy, all the things you want to see out of the team. And they played well even before the red card at that time, but um, did really well after that. Maybe that was a factor in the game against Fulham in terms of the legs and energy levels and things like that. But the part that disappoints me more often, because there's you'd said it in a tweet, and I definitely agree with this point, is that I think I understand we're losing games. We've been losing games a while now. United haven't put together good performances back to back in probably 2 years now. Um, so we lose games. I can understand that. But when we're watching and it looks like players are okay with losing, when they're walking around, when you're down one goal, there was a point, I think, from 50 or 45 minutes to like 70 minutes or so where I felt like they really didn't even care that they were losing at that stage in the game. Letting Fulham have the ball, not really trying, not really running. That was frustrating. At the same time, it was a bit odd because it seemed like as the game went on, there were some really praiseworthy performances and efforts from a few people, a few of the players involved. I was really, really impressed with I think two that really stood out from an effort standpoint. I mean, Bruno always, right? Bruno always. We talk plenty, cannot heap enough praise on Bruno Fernandes for his commitment to the club, but Joshua Zirkzee and Matthias de Ligt, I thought, just the application they put in playing the full 120 minutes, the things they were doing with no legs left in them, even from the end of full time, I thought it was very, very worthy of at least mention, and praise for what they were bringing to the table and the effort levels that came in through it in that time. So that's as much as it. There's a lot of negatives to take away. I'm trying to think a little positively today on some things. I'd also thought, of course, it was really good to see. It sometimes comes in these scenarios, injuries, things like that. But to see Cheeto Obi and Aiden Heaven to get their Old Trafford debuts was nice. I thought both were actually um, really positive takeaways from the game. Cheeto did a lot better than I thought he would be given the circumstances, and Aiden Heaven did very well, all things considered, too. In the limited bits that we saw of him as a defender, he looked calm and composed, and those are good moments for the team and good moments for those players. You got to take some of those positives away, I suppose, given everything that's going on.
Yeah, I mean, we should take positives from the performances of young players, from TDOB, from young Aiden Heaven. If there's going to be any optimism in the future, it's primarily where it's
Yeah.
going to come from.
Yes.
These young kids coming in and giving something different. And none of what you have Cheeto Obi made it harder to defend Rasmus Hoyland in a lot of ways because we understand that they're feeding off scraps. But Cheeto Obi turned some of those scraps into
Mm,
chances, and he looked
yeah.
more dangerous in that game than Rasmus Hoyland has looked in a Premier League game for as long as I can remember. And
Yeah.
I feel for Rasmus Hoyland, maybe you're a bit more intelligent with your energy as you evolve, where it's about making sure that it's controlled and that you implement it in the right way, where when you're 17 it's still a bit chaotic. It's hard for me to
Yeah.
believe that kid's 17 when my
I
son's
know.
18. It's hard to believe, like, and they've came in. Young Cheeto Obi, they couple of decent chances, to be fair.
Yeah. He
Um,
probably would have scored. I mean, Leno, that was a very good save from Leno in that one instance on with his left
yeah,
hand.
he
And
should have scored right at the end of the game.
yes, yes,
Decent chance,
I think he should have. Yeah.
yeah. And ultimately, when you're looking for reasons why United are dire, why they're in the position they're in, why it's so repetitive, it's this. The only way you can improve morale and environmental, conditions is by winning games of football. You have to score goals,
Yeah.
and United just can't score goals. They just
Yeah.
they don't even look like they're capable of building up sustained pressure. I mean, you're just watching the game go by where you're watching stuff where for the majority of it, you can see it on any Sunday league park anywhere. How many times did Casemiro launch a ball 90 or 80, 90 yards long up to nobody? How many times did we see 5 yard passes, go out for a throw in or behind or to somebody's,
Hmm.
passing to Fulham players? How many times did I see Fulham with the ball? 3, 4 passes, they've just walked right through United because there's no
Yeah.
pressure on the ball. There's half-hearted
Yeah.
pressure. I'm looking at this and I'm going, there's no way this football team can win this game. No way. In order
Yeah.
to dominate possession, you have to be better than the opposition. In order to win this game, you have to actually want to win it.
Hmm.
And I didn't see a United team that really wanted to win that game of
Yeah.
football. I saw players that were get. I'm not trying because he's not trying. I'm
Yeah.
not his response. I'm
Yeah.
not my responsibility. You can just see it's completely
Yeah.
fractured, and there's no collective, and on the field in terms of chemistry, in terms of collective effort to you tell everything by how a team defends. That's because that's
Yes.
what they don't want to do. And to me, that's a big problem for Ruben Amorim that his players are going onto the field and they don't care about impressing him.
Hmm.
They don't. And you hear Dallo last week said, but we don't have confidence in the plan. This is a big problem, James. That is unacceptable.
Yeah. Yeah, it is, and it's why I think we see like such a flip back and forth, because it's not there. It'll be one game yes, one game no, one game yes,
When
more
is it
games no
there?
than yes. Like, and it's interesting
When is
because I
it there?
thought, yeah. Well,
When do you see the positive? As I don't, even Leicester at home, even Ipswich at home,
yeah.
they
Not
conceded
a
to
lot of
Ipswich in the
them.
45th minute,
Yeah.
right?
Not a
United,
lot of them.
right when
No
did
doubt
United
about
concede
it.
against Ipswich?
They could concede it
The
in the
second
fourth
one.
minute and then the 45th, yeah, 44th minute
When did
right
they?
after the red
Yeah,
card.
when did they
Yeah.
concede against Fulham? 45th minute, right?
Yeah, it was about the same thing, and
Same
we've
thing.
seen that for a long time. I mean, that was last year. We kept every single game before and after halftime we concede, and yeah, it is confusing. It is, and it's like it is odd because in the FA Cup in the previous round they went down to Arsenal not that long ago. Went down and put in a very good performance, a very hard performance, down to 10 men, held on and won on penalties. Um, and it is frustrating to see it because I'm not seeing the commitment that you would want from a lot of from the team as a collective, right? I'm not definitely not seeing that. And that's the part that's hard to shake, how you deal with all of these things, and where you kind of almost have to take the young players as the only positives, because they're coming in with a point to prove, for themselves, right? To perform, to do something. And that's why they're performing, not because of the collective. That's why they can come in and do something. But I think that's been a story at United for a long time. Some young players will come in and they want to show something for their career. And the longer they spend in the first team, the worse it gets. The longer they spend,
Yeah,
with the squad, the worse, the more it falls off, and that disappears, and the collective is gone, and that hasn't been fixed yet. It
it
hasn't been
hasn't.
fixed.
No, it hasn't been fixed. And eventually, all organisms, like we've said before, adapt to the environment. These young players
Yep.
come in with enthusiasm. These young
Yep.
players are at a different point in their career. And eventually, they look around at experienced players who are not committed, who just want to leave the football club, who don't believe that their ambition matches that of the club, who don't believe in what they're being asked to do. It's just a collective failure. and eventually, if you're a young kid going into a particular office, or you'll adjust to what the environment is.
Yes. Yeah.
That will affect you, and then it starts to have a negative impact on your development, and then it leads to all these other externalities of fans are coming after you, and
Yeah.
and it's very difficult. So this is what I'm saying, like about the summer. You could turn around and say, Ruben Amorim, here's a couple 100 million. But if you don't change the environment, I don't care who you. It's
Yes.
the Ronaldo
Yeah.
face aquarium situation, James.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, and look, and I think some of the point that has proven over this last month, just to bring this kind of point up, is we talked about this in January. We talked about it before, because you and I have both ended up in certain cases getting a lot of stick for defending certain players like Marcus Rashford and all of that. And time again, people will jump and say, well, that's the reason the environment's bad. They'll try to pin
Mm,
it on an individual like that and say, well, that's why, this is happening. That's why that this isn't there. If you get rid of them, then the environment is fixed. Then it's all good. It's not, is it? Marcus Rashford leaving hasn't fixed Manchester United. It might have fixed him. Funnily enough, it might have made his life a lot better. Which I think it has, and he's doing really well at Aston Villa, which is good. But the point is, it goes to show very much that there is this environment issue at United, that you're not going to be able to sit and say, well, it's this guy, it's that guy, or it's this guy. They're the reason, and it is infectious, and it causes trouble for so many people, that come into the team, and why they don't last. And it's hard to see the evidence that it is fixed, but they have to. And if they don't, then you will have young players come in, and Cheeto will come in, and Nathan Heaven will come in, and then they'll perform, and then they won't at some point, and it'll end up in the same cycle that goes back and forth, and we'll have players fail time and time again, and
James,
that is the most important thing for sure.
unless United buy quality players in the prime of their career,
Yeah.
these young kids can't save you.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
so
Yep.
in fact, the probability is their careers were going to get irreparably damaged being put into a club like Manchester United, where you're expected to perform like an elite level forward. You're not given the luxury of being judged the way other kids are, or the other
Yep.
football clubs. That pressure is unbelievable. It's relentless, and you're going to be criticized if you don't win games of football and you don't score goals. And
Yep.
I I'm telling you, like Cheeto Obi is about 1 or 2 games away, where he doesn't score before fans start calling him shit. Right, this is a guarantee. If it
Yeah.
hasn't already happened, right? This is
Yeah.
how does a young player develop in that type of
Yep.
environment?
Yep.
I mean, the internet, Twitter is a absolute rancid
Mhm.
system. You look what happened to the European lad. I mean,
Yeah.
but what is
Yeah.
happening to our society collectively, mentally, where people look at that and are not mortified and ashamed to the fucking core? Like,
Yeah.
what is the developmental issue that you
Yep.
think that there's anything to be celebrated? You got death threats
Yeah.
about a
Yeah, and I
week ago.
posted those
What
because
is
just to
wrong
give
with you?
people,
Like,
like, the example, like, this is what
I
goes
just
on online.
over a
It's like,
football opinion.
yeah,
You
it's
want to? I mean,
crazy.
what the fuck is wrong with people? Like,
Yep.
this is why I've become. Sorry for my language, but this is like you look at that and you think the impact on a human being's development.
Yeah.
It's absolutely devastating. It's a
Yep.
miracle to me that they are able to overcome it at all. I can't imagine.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think that for this is a difficult football club to develop
Mm.
at, because it's finishing school. You're judged on being an elite level forward. Now you could develop in an environment where you have world class players around you and to protect you, but United don't have that. And I don't know. Let me ask you about Ruben Amorim.
Mhm.
Is he responsible in any way?
To a degree, yeah. I mean, for what we're seeing right now, he's certainly part of it. I think that in another respect, he's of course also coming into the same type of issue. Like, I understand there's a view, well, that could he win more football games as a manager? Yeah, for sure. Are the things that he's done that I think are probably mistakes? Definitely at this stage in time, there's no doubt about that. Um, But it's like, I think about, Ralph Rangnick, and he said some pretty things that were pretty obvious, obviously. Like they're not that genius. Everybody can see them. Everybody knows that they were true. But he kind of came in almost a similar fashion, even though he wasn't a permanent manager. He comes in as a manager at that time when Solskjaer was let go. As a manager with a system, he's known for, he's a guy who plays a certain way, who developed this, who, is the whatever, the godfather of the Gegan press and the Liverpool, and he's got these systems. And he comes into United, and I think he spent one game trying it and gave up, honestly. Like when I recall that season, he spent one game, and
Mm.
we watched that one half against Crystal Palace, I think it was. In the first 30 minutes, United were pressing and they were running and they were intense. And it was like, wow, maybe there's something in this. And then it just went to absolute shit the rest of the season and became incredibly depressing. And I think of it in a similar way, like, you know, it's in a similar way for the players and the manager. And I think he has some faults on this in terms of how we're playing now, but I think he's also been rightly or wrongly hired with, you know, told this is you do what you're going to do, and that's kind of what it is, and they wanting to lay some foundations, and whether that all works out or not, I don't know. um but in the same way that that they could go sign a bunch of players this summer, if they're not if they don't have an aligned environment, they could hire any manager and we'd have the same problems at the end of the day, that just keep coming up time and time again. And obviously, he deserves the time and a window and a preseason and all of that to try, because he hasn't had any of those things at this stage in time to see how we do. Um, but yeah, there is that with him as well. There's probably more he could do to do better on certain things and win games as well, win more matches too. But I guess to what ends depends on your long-term view of things.
To me, a manager's responsible for results. If they're not
Yep.
responsible for results, what are they responsible for?
Yeah.
Right? So he doesn't get to divorce himself from accountability or responsibility for what we're seeing on the pitch. I'm sorry, he doesn't.
Yeah. Of course.
And it usually takes me about 2 years before I make a hard decision on a manager we're for or against. I'm agnostic on Amorim, but that's not a compliment. I'm indifferent actually.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at object performances every week that I'm envious of all the people in the world who've never heard of Manchester United. Who can never watch
Yeah.
it, right? And I'm watching performances that are dreadful, that have no entertainment value, players that are questioning him in public. And to be honest, he was asked a question about Alejandro Garnacho going down the tunnel, and he was the only human being in the room who felt that inferred some criticism of Marcus Rashford. I mean, that to me is a bit pathological. It's a bit
I didn't
weird.
understand that answer, to be quite
Yeah, I don't
honest.
know
I
how he
I,
felt
I
that
didn't
was a
even I didn't
Rashford. Like,
even
what's
yeah.
what that to me is
Yeah.
a bit bizarre. He's saying, I watched his response to Rooney claiming he was naive, and he looked really upset. He went after Keane on the Bruno Fernandes thing, which I agree with Amorim on, not Roy Keane on, to be honest.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and then he's talking about Anthony, saying, I guarantee you it's physicality, which then makes me question, if it's physicality for Anthony, then why did you sign Casemiro? Not him, obviously. Why did the club sign
Yeah.
Casemiro? You're signing a 30-year-old and Rafael Varane, you're telling me fit,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is obvious anyway, James, right? If we've
Yes.
said this before,
Yeah.
look at Modric wouldn't be playing in the Premier League at 39.
No.
So you can play in a Real
Yeah.
Madrid midfield where you dominate possession in almost every game,
Yeah.
and you're not going to be physically tested in the same way. So, if you're saying, you can go play well in Spain, but not in England because of physicality, I'm trying to understand why United spend 60 million on Casemiro and give him a 4 or 5 year contract when, anyway.
But can anybody answer that question? Because it's like,
No.
it's so stupid,
And
Because you're right, and he's right about that too. But it's like it calls into question every single decision United make. It has been so like utterly ridiculous for such a long time. All of these things,
Yeah, it is.
it's
And James, we have to hold them accountable. We have to evaluate them in every way possible.
yeah,
I think Ruben Amorim is a exceptional coach,
yeah,
but he's in a situation that he's never been in. You know, he's
yeah,
captain of a ship with a hostile crew that don't
yeah,
want to be on a ship, right?
yep,
That's simply impossible for that to be successful.
yeah,
This is a club issue
yeah,
because this is this is a problem that has to be fixed from the top. But I look at this and I'm like, I'm I don't know how it's possible that you've last year was honest horribilis, right? A horrible season.
yep,
And they've somehow managed to make United significantly worse in every single metric on the field. Goals scored, defending, home record, getting knocked out of cups, management decisions, recruitment decisions, executive decisions, ticket prices, it's just a constant stream of negativity and darkness. And it's like, when are you going to give us a decision that we can say we would never have been fortunate enough to benefit from that because we didn't have this expertise? Where do you show me
sure,
your expertise?
yeah,
Where does it show up? I mean, I'm trusting that at some point these things are going to pay off,
yep,
but why should
yep.
I trust that? Like,
I
where's
know
the belief?
it's hard. It is hard, honestly, and I don't think that anybody should, as of yet, like be sure. I understand the plan and the direction, whether it's actually executed, whether they can actually pull it off, whether it actually results in a positives gained, and all of that on all fronts, right? On Amorim, on on the budgetary decisions, on all the things that are happening. At some point, it has to pay off. Now, it can be seen that this is all like the necessary negatives we never went through that were just pushed off, pushed off, pushed off, pushed off for years and years by the Glazers to never, because we know, right? I mean, we've talked about it. We all agree. The Glazers would have made these cuts years ago if they weren't shit scared to do them. The Glazers would have done a lot of this stuff a long time ago if they weren't honestly scared to do these kinds of things or
Maybe,
putting them off.
James, I'm being told they're heavily being driven by Sir Jim Ratcliffe.
Well, no, I'm
Maybe the
sure that
business will
they
go
are.
anyway,
I'm
but
sure
like
that
we
they
got
are.
the right people. I
Yeah.
mean, this
No,
is
no,
a
no, no,
largely
no, no. It's
Ratcliffe-driven
not
process.
yeah, it's not to divorce them from the decisions being
Yeah.
made, but they were things that they should have done on a more gradual basis for years leading up. Proper financial management of the club has been non-existent, right? For
Mhm.
20 years, right? So that was more my point. Not I'm not
Mhm.
divorcing them from the
Yeah.
decisions to do it because they're doing it. They're pushing it, but they should have been done in the right way, more gradually, correctly over years and years and years and years, rather than the way that things have been addressed and handled. But
Mhm.
yeah, we look, we I think we're all in an unfortunate situation of looking and saying whether you agree with what is being done, whether you understand what is being done, whether you like Amorim, whether you don't like Amorim, whether you like players, whether you don't like players. We're all sitting there and thinking, okay, this is what it is. I'm ready to go into the end of the season and summer and say I want to pass judgment based on what they do there and how we look next season, because I don't think you get another season to have things not look a lot better. I don't know how that's going to happen. We'll see. But I don't think you get to go into next year. You have, to do all of this, you have to have a good summer. You have to recruit players well. There has to be a logic and a sensibility to it that we have not necessarily seen at previous points in the past. And then you have to go into next season and actually be performing and playing well and doing it, because many clubs have turned their fortunes around very quickly. From getting the decisions right.
Mhm.
Even much smaller clubs, it doesn't have to take years to turn things around, and to fix things if you make the right decisions, especially with the finances that United should have to spend based on some of the things they've done this summer, or that they're doing to supposedly be able to invest in the first team. So you're going to have to do those investments, and you're going to have to do it well and get it right and show to everybody, yeah, there is a reason we've done all of this. And here's the payoff. The payoff cannot be too long down the road. I mean, this is true of any, um, I feel like we've discussed this before, but I mean, this is true of anything in life, right? Like, if you're gonna struggle, if you're gonna suffer for a
Mhm.
payoff, that runway cannot keep going forever. The longer that runway is, the harder it is to accept, but also the more likely it is to fail if the payoff for that runway is too far down the line. And I genuinely don't think we United fans, players, the team, and the club can actually function another season that isn't good, that doesn't progress in the right direction, that doesn't show a reason for all the things happening. I don't think it can. I'm not sure I can, as a United fan, sit there and say, yeah, if next season was like this one, do I want to sit here and talk about it every week and keep doing that? I would really, really struggle to find the energy, and the time, and the want to do that. I'm not saying I'm not going to be a United fan for life, but I think a lot of people would find it really hard, to do that. So there has to be payoff for all of this. And I'm a I'm even more impatient in general with things like managers and such. I backed Amorim a lot. I think he's a good manager. I think he's a good coach. I think I would judge him next season. I judged Ten Hag just as early, so I'd probably judge Amorim next season. And the same goes for Lavelle being appointed and Wilcox and all of these guys. If they're in the job now, you better do a damn good job this coming summer, and you better do a damn good job and show something for it next season, or I would probably lose any belief in things moving forward. You can't go to the following one and say we're gonna have another bad year. It's just you can't. It's impossible.
Yeah, this is the thing, James. But in the summer, I understand. Particularly it's nascent. There. This is a new process,
Yep.
and it will take a while before, we see the fruits of that labor. Um, but we haven't seen that,
Yes.
and
Agreed.
so we've seen the opposite.
Yeah.
And this was not what we were promised. We weren't promised that, like, we're going to come in. The first season is going to be a disaster, and you just have to accept that.
Yeah.
No, we were told that this was going to result in gains and improvements, and that hasn't happened. And I don't care what any of us say, they weren't paying people to do this, right? And
Correct. Yep.
so they should be looking at things like the fact that there's so many players that fail as
Yep.
their failure. Not
Yep.
the players. The players are
Yep.
responsible, of course, but
Yep.
why are we unable to provide an environment that gives us the greatest probability that our players, our people will develop and improve
Yep.
and realize their potential? Why are we an impediment to that?
Yep.
Why is it whatever we try to plant here doesn't grow, it dies? Like, there's something
Yep.
about the soil that is not fertile that we are responsible for. And
Yep.
and that is something that they have to fix. Not easy,
Yep.
especially when you're talking about Jim Ratcliffe, and he has a process that they use in their other businesses, and it's almost ineluctable, where they just can't resist doing the things that they do in other businesses without paying respect to football and saying this is not a petrochemicals company. We're going to, but it's very difficult for them to not adhere to a process that they've used in other businesses and not use it here. And so I hope that they bring a certain level of expertise. Jim Ratcliffe, at the very least, has been someone that has accessibility, at least is
Yeah.
willing to explain his decisions, whether you like them or not. He's willing to talk to football. United we stand. He's willing to speak to fans,
Yeah.
and at least is accessible. But you're right, James. I mean, United cannot have another season like
Yep.
this. I mean, this
Yep.
is darkness. I understand other fans will listen to that and go, "What are you talking about?" But this is not just bad results.
Yes.
Watching United games, mate,
Mm.
is very, very difficult. I'm sitting there, I'm like, if you didn't have to watch this, you're not compelled by the love of the football club. If this was a team I didn't like or a sport I didn't, I'd be like, this is
Yeah.
absolute. This is a
Yeah.
professional embarrassment. Like, this is
Hmm.
not. There's, I don't know. This to me is unacceptable. And I don't know. There's certain things about Amorim are rubbing me. I don't know why he needed to talk about. I know I mentioned the reference to Rashford, but we're Garnacho. I'm going to talk to him about this, and you can ask me about it in the next press conference. You've just immediately turned it into soap opera whenever it would have been such an easy thing to bat away and on goal. You know what? It was freezing. We'll talk. It's not. Stop trying to make an issue out of nothing. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Over. And then if you have an issue with Alejandro Garnacho, then you deal with it in private. You know, as Warren Buffett, you in public you criticize collectively, in private
Yeah.
you criticize
Yeah.
individually. Okay,
Yeah.
and so that to me is like, okay, now you've opened it. Okay, so what happened with Garnacho? Oh, he's going to buy food for all the team. Well, certainly Jim Ratcliffe's not fucking paying for it, so I don't. Right? Am I? Why? Why?
Mm.
Why can't you keep that in house?
Mm.
And then they did not. I mean, to me, a guy who once said that he doesn't react after games smash the TV. I'm sure like this is extremely frustrating for him and complete betrayal of his instincts and anything he's experienced as a footballer and a manager. I accept that. This is new territory for him. He's not used
Yeah.
to being in this position. The stress, the pressure. I mean, his eyes are bloodshot now. I mean, I feel for him, and it's
Yep.
very difficult to coach in this environment. The question isn't, is he part of the problem? Is he part of the solution?
Yep.
And he needs players, he needs investment, no doubt. But how do we know we're not doing the Ronaldo aquarium thing? I hate to bring it up, but you get what I'm. How do we know we're not
Yeah.
going to have a couple of other players in the summer by October? They look terrible.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I understand. I agree. I think that there's definitely, room to be concerned about it. And I would again look at it like if he's compromising on things, if he's falling down a bit on things that he probably wouldn't and shouldn't do, again, a consequence of things like environment and such as well. It's like I was saying to you before, when there was all these questions about Rashford. At one point, I said, there's definitely critique of Amorim for answering them, but why are they still being allowed to be asked? Why doesn't the club
Mhm.
shut this down? Why doesn't the club say enough with the fucking
Mhm.
questions about
Yeah,
Marcus Rashford? Like,
yeah.
why don't they do anything about it? You know what I mean? Because that's what I would do. I would sit there saying, we've hired this young manager. He's taken all the heat for us. He's got the situations to deal with that we didn't deal with properly. The team is bad. The season is bad. Maybe we should do something about, instead of just throwing him, up in front of everybody in the lights and saying, you're our shield, you're our protection. Because it's been like that for managers at United for a long time too.
And this is not a one-eyed defense of Marcus Rashford. I know
Yeah.
people will think, "Oh, you just your whole soul intent and motivation behind this is to defend Marcus." Right? It's not that. What I'm trying to understand is, if you look at United culturally and what's going
Yeah.
on over the last 6 to 8 months, there's been a very deliberate attempt to target high earners,
Yeah.
okay, to get them off the books, to get them out.
Yep.
And it's hard for me when I look at people like Casemiro and Rashford and all that there, and what De Gea's contract mess, Varane, all that. This is not deliberate to force people out. I mean, they've been doing it with the staff. When private equity buys your company, okay, especially if it's failing, there's certain stages. First stage is they clean the bottom. They go after the people at the bottom. Easy. It doesn't
Yep.
cost a lot, and it's an easy hit. Then you get to the middle, where people are
Hmm.
paid more money, and the cost of redundancies, layoffs is a lot more expensive. So they create conditions that will get those people to quit. And they do stupid shit like, we're going to take your food away. We're going to take your bonus away. Instead of getting $100 bonus, you're getting a $40, because it's that type of stuff irritates people. Remember Ibrahimovic talking about being charged for a bottle of juice.
Mm.
That doesn't matter. You're making these little
Hmm.
microaggressions, if you want to call.
Yeah.
When you're middle to upper, you can go somewhere else, right? They
Yeah.
want you. They want to create conditions that force you to quit, so they don't have to pay. But this is where you have this, vacuum inside,
Hmm.
where it's just a negative vacuum of trying to force people out, and
Yep.
have a broken. And look, I believe that every year it's healthy for a company to change a certain number of its employees, right?
Yeah. Yeah, there's
That's
still
just healthy,
turnover, yeah,
right?
there is
Yeah,
refreshing
but
environments and stuff,
yeah,
yeah.
but this right here, you know, if you have people that work for you that hate you, I mean, to me, the wrong way to go about it is we're going to sack you if you leak. What are you afraid of them leaking?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe address what they're going to leak. If you're seriously that afraid of a regular employee going out and speaking to me
Yep.
about how you're treating them, maybe the issue is how you're treating them.
Yeah.
And I respect the necessity, but there's a way to do things, and I just think that
I think
until
there's a
you
lot more
make settlement on it, sorry, go ahead.
transparency that would solve some of that, like, I think there is more transparency that would solve more of those types of things too, as well. When things are a necessity, then you should be okay to be fully transparent about them, very upfront about them, and very visible about them. I think that in critique, it's kind of embarrassing, like, Omar and Dan Ashworth showed up to back Ten Hag and give this, like, public thing to journalists before a game that United lost, of course, to Liverpool at home. But but then you sack him a month and a half later, and then you're not really heard of for a long time, and Ashworth gets sacked. I think there should be more. I said this before Amorim came in too. I think there should be more words from the people in charge above the coach at United, um, on football topics, on business topics. And Jim Ratcliffe, like you said, to be fair, has been somewhat present. Definitely a hell of a lot more than the Glazers. I mean, he's spoken
Mm.
10 times more than they have in 20 years. But there's guys who I think could also be a lot more present, and be more visible about these questions and be able to answer them, in different respects, and put themselves forward. I mean, I do think that happens more at other clubs in Spain and stuff like that too, that the executives take a bit more front-facing responsibility for certain things that are ongoing, and I think that would help as well.
Just to me, like a regular fan forum. I know they
Yeah,
have fans forum, but regular
for
communication
everybody,
yeah, I
yeah,
don't have to do a
I
Sky
agree.
TV
Yeah,
interview every week, because you can overshare, you can over
yes,
explain. But
yeah,
to me, it's about how you talk to people, how you communicate a message. Don't be circumventing the fans forum and then having major ticket prices imposed
yeah,
on people, because it completely negates the fan forum and the reason for its existence. So to me, um it's disappointing, James, because this
yep,
was not what was, I understand, layoff support. And there's not a human being, by the way, on the planet who has a job who doesn't understand that one, you can be sacked at any minute.
yeah,
Every
yep,
guy goes to bed at night shit scared that they might lose their job in case
yep,
and then everything falls down around them and they're
yep,
nervous things that every man puts his head on a pillow knows this reality. But we just want, okay, treat me with dignity so that I can minimize the suffering on the
yep,
people that are going to be impacted by this, so I can see the punch coming. That's all I ask. Just
yep,
look me in the eye and say, I respect your work, your time. Because, James, people pay you for your time, right?
yep,
But here's the thing, there's not a king rich enough in the world that can buy back 5 minutes. That
yep,
time is finite. It's not
yep,
just for your labor, it's for the fact that I'm taking you away from a million other things that you'd rather do.
yep,
Okay. And buying time you're never getting back. That's okay. I'm here because you make money off me, and that's fine. But when I'm on the way out, just treat me as a human being and respect
yep,
that this has domino consequences. That's all. Anyway,
sure,
um, so I have to be honest, there wasn't a part of me that was confident going into the Fulham game, disappointed United lost. But I think, James, there's so many other parts of that game that even if United had pulled out a win, they if United won that penalty shootout, it would have been very difficult to shake off
mm-hmm.
their
It
anger
wasn't
and
going to change the
concern.
feeling,
Yeah,
yeah,
like to
yeah,
me, like it's just I'm still so angry at the pedestrian move. Like to me,
yep,
that is your foot. Like there's, I understand footballers can be angry with their employee or whatever, but you're not being sent to Dunkirk.
correct,
You're
yes.
just asked to go on a
You
football
still
field
asked to
for
go on the
90
pitch and
fucking
run
minutes,
around,
mate, and run.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm not asking you to
yep,
put you're not a Chinese miner. You're
yep,
making a couple of 100 grand. You're going home in your Ferrari and your Lambo. You've got 16, 17 gorgeous women,
yep,
and just give me 90 minutes.
yep,
Just go on that field and play for your mother, your father, your brother, your sister, your son, the kids in your neighborhood that
Yep.
didn't make it, your whatever. Find a reason to play for 90 minutes and
Yep.
give me everything. And if the guy next
Exactly.
to you doesn't run, let him deal with that. But make sure it's not you.
Yep.
And to me, like when I looked at some of those kids' performances, there's certain pros should be totally embarrassed about
Yep.
that.
For sure. Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
so yeah, really, really disappointed with the result. So when we look at the rest of the season, James, I think that it's going to be pretty much like this because
Yeah.
I don't think
Pretty
United can
much.
do anything to change it. And for Ruben Amorim, let's say United flirt around the position they're in. They'll win a couple of games, lose a couple of games. Well, let's say they end up empty-handed. When do we start judging him next season?
I think in the first 6 months, frankly, I'm like I said, I'm fairly impatient, but I think given the time he's had with the team, given a preseason, given a summer of players coming in, and I think he'll get that, and I think he'll get a decent one on that. Um, I think that we need to see. It doesn't have to be the finished article, right? But we need to see a strong upward trend, and we need to see certain things that we cannot compromise on: the effort, the intensity, the togetherness of the team next season. That has to be there. The play doesn't have to be great. That has to be there. And the play has to be getting better and better. It has to be an upward trend there, but those are inexcusable because if they're not there, then the environment is still wrong. The locker room is still wrong. The
Mm,
dressing room is still wrong. And it's not going to magically fix just because they get better at being coached, or they get coached more on how to do an overlap or coached more on this or that. Those things are going to take time. The positional play, the patterns, that takes time. The other stuff, it has to be there. It has to be there following the summer. So
yeah,
I honestly would judge him right off the bat, not game by game. I'm not saying that, but in that first 6 months of the season, we should be able to see it really well that United are there, they're trying, they're working, they're together, they're a team. And if we don't see that, then I would consider already that we haven't got the right answer. We haven't fixed things.
I think he's got to do it before then. Maggie's got to do it
Yeah.
the first 2 or 3 months, but we shall
No,
see. I
no,
know you
I
have a heart.
agree. I agree. Yeah, I agree
Yeah, I
in
mean,
that
six
respect.
months in terms of like,
I'm saying
okay,
you kind of would judge it at
yeah,
6 months, but I think you need to
yes,
see it from the get go,
yeah,
really.
I know exactly what you were saying.
Yeah.
It's just he doesn't have to perfect it right away, but we have to see progress
Yes.
towards a
Yeah.
particular goal, and maybe in 6 months' time we're good. I know you have a heart out,
Exactly.
mate.
Yes.
It's a little bit shorter, 10, 15 minutes shorter, so I'm going to let you run. We will be back again next week. Probably put a podcast out later in the week. So
Yes.
take it easy, mate. Thanks to all of you for downloading the pod, for tuning in, and don't forget catch up with my colleague here. He puts out exceptional content all week. It's I will be back next week, living in Spurred. Take it easy, mate.
Sounds good. See you later, buddy.
Bye.